what is a community land trust? Community land trust is also known as a CLT, is a nonprofit organization that owns land on behalf of the community. A CLT is really a tool to take properties out of the ever escalating real estate market and make them more affordable to community members. After acquiring a property, a CLT splits the title between the land and the housing. The CLT will retain ownership of the land forever and either sells or rents the housing that sits on the land. If rented, the renters must be below 80% of area median income. CLTs do not generally subsidize individual rents, but we set the rents as low as possible while still covering our expenses. If a CLT decides to sell the housing, buyers purchase the home, but not the land. Removing the value of the land from the purchase makes home ownership more affordable. The CLT will then lease the land back to the homeowner through a 99-year lease. A resale formula built into that ground lease ensures that the home will be affordable to future owners. So owners can earn equity and sell their home, but they can never sell it at market rate. Homeowners are responsible for all the taxes, insurance, mortgage, repairs, and maintenance that any homeowner would be responsible for. Next slide. What is CLAM? CLAM is the acronym for Community Land Trust of West Marin. Don't try to figure out why. It doesn't really make sense with the letters, but that's what evolved 20 years ago when CLAM started, and we're sort of stuck with it. CLAM's mission is to provide stable and permanently affordable homes in an environmentally responsible way in the communities surrounding Tomales Bay. The communities surrounding Tomales Bay are rural and about 20 miles from the nearest urban center. You can see there's a picture there. It's kind of small, but you can kind of get a sense of the Tomales Bay and Point Reyes Station that's there. Inverness is pretty tucked into the vegetation, not terribly visible. It's mostly zoned single-family housing. There's very few multi-family housing projects. CLAM owns 2 of the 4 apartment buildings in West Marin. Most affordable housing in California is built through low-income housing tax credits, and a typical LIHTC project is a dense high-rise apartment building. That type of housing can work well in urban areas, but rural areas need a different housing type that better reflects the rural character, like modest starter homes placed on small separate lots. Rural communities like Point Reyes exist across the state and need support in transitioning to electrification and affordable energy. We're also in the coastal zone and adjacent to the national seashore. It's a popular vacation destination just an hour from San Francisco. So we have a high percentage of second homes and vacation rentals. Most local wages are in agriculture and tourism, and they're not sufficient to afford the housing here. I think we're in one of the most challenging areas to create affordable housing. The demographic here is older as well, the average age being 64. CLAM is a small CLT. We have 18 rentals and we've done 2 home ownerships. We have a couple of home ownerships in the pipeline. Also in the pipeline are 51 units of housing from the former Coast Guard neighborhood. Planning is underway to rehab these homes. Although those plans are not fully baked yet, they are to be all electric with solar panels and EV charging. When that neighborhood served as housing for the Coast Guard, the homes were all propane and electric. Next slide. Providing homes in an environmentally responsible way. That's our mission. Just want to share a few examples of some of the projects that we've done to meet that mission. CLAM did the first new construction passive home in California about 12 years ago. I think that was 2010. It was super insulated, airtight, passive solar panels, supplied endless hot water, and an HRV system. Many homes were being retrofitted as passive homes, but that was at the time, this was the first new construction passive homes. So people came from all over to learn how we were doing it. And there's a little picture of the house there. CLAM has also sold the first home on the CLT ownership model in Marin. It was a rehab. It was a sick home that we rehabbed with many energy efficiency upgrades, like triple pane windows, high value insulation in the floor and attic, high energy efficient appliances, including a hybrid heat pump, hot water system, and a lot of on-site materials were recycled into the rehab project. Next slide. So the case study I'm here to talk about today is the Mesa Electrification project. Hot water previously was supplied by propane and individual tanks for each apartment. There's a little photo of the apartment there. This is a 4-unit apartment building. No other appliances were gas powered, just the hot water. The plan was to electrify the building, replace the hot water system with sand and heat pumps. We discussed various options for electrifying the hot water system over many years. We eventually landed on sand and heat pumps because they're twice as efficient as traditional heat pump water heaters. They're very cool system. They're quieter than traditional heat pump water heaters, and they use carbon dioxide as a refrigerant, which enables them to extract heat from very low ambient temperatures. There were 5 old inefficient water heaters at the apartments. They were about 15 years old. They were reaching the end of their lives. They were replaced with 2 sand and high energy efficient heat pump water heaters that serve the whole building. There's 2, you can advance to the next slide. There were 2, so there's 2 tanks inside the laundry room and 2 heat pumps outside the laundry room. We used, so we had MCE came out and did an energy audit for the apartment building, and this work was consistent with their recommendations. We did have capacity in that electric system to add the stand-ins at that time, although we knew that the electric panel was old and was in need of an upgrade. That was a daunting and expensive project, so we tried to kick that down the road as far as possible. And since we had capacity to add the stand-ins, we did that first. The following year, one of the meters failed and we had to upgrade the whole electric panel. So we were forced to, just a year later. We did receive a layered funding for this hot water system. We had a CDBG grant for the heat pump conversion. We also had, we had a small grant from the West Marin Fund to support that. And then we had MCE rebates as well for the heat pumps. So that really, all that funding helped a lot, helped enormously. We did additional energy efficient upgrades as well. The MCE audit identified several things that we could do. So we did receive rebates for upgrading the apartments from single pane to double pane windows and for insulating the crawl space. It took time. It took 1.5 years from being awarded the CDBG funds to the completion of the project. 1.5 years. The grant goes through a review process before entering contract, and no funds can be spent on the project until we get in contract. Okay, next slide. Successes. Greater comfort for the residents, especially with the better insulation and the double pane windows. Their space heating improved through those upgrades and was also quieter with the new double pane windows. Energy savings for the organization, that sentence should have a question mark. In the short run, it actually ended up costing the organization more in utility bills after the heat pumps were installed. A little more, not an extreme amount. But building the infrastructure for the future was part of our long-term view. So that was a value to us. And the cost of propane has risen since we electrified that building 5 years ago. So it's likely that we may now be realizing a savings on that. Another success is the layered funding that made it totally feasible for us to do the project. And we've been very, very happy with the stand-ins. They've been just wonderful. So we're looking to repeat the whole thing at an 8-unit apartment building that we have in Stinson Beach. Mesa Apartments had the capacity, the electric capacity to add the stand-ins, but the apartments in Stinson Beach do not. So we are first challenged to upgrade the electric panel, which is old and undersized, before we can install heat pump water heaters there. That process is daunting and time consuming. So we will again layer some funding. We have been awarded a CDBG grant to both upgrade the electric panel and convert the hot water system to electric heat pumps. We will again be eligible to receive the MCE AEA rebates, and that funding makes the project feasible. Without that funding, the project would be prohibitively expensive. The challenges, the grant process can take a lot of time. It's been more than a year and a half since we were awarded funds for the CDBG grant for the Stinson apartments, and yet we are still not in contract. And I can spend no funds on the project until we're in contract. The grant process requires a NEPA review, and the county has been backlogged on that, although hopefully we will be in contract by the end of this month. Another challenge is the electric panel upgrade. It's daunting. It's challenging to coordinate contractors, coordinate with PG&E, and we need to plan the electric panel upgrade in a way that minimizes the amount of time the residents would be without power doing the switch over from the old system to the new system. Another challenge for us here in a rural area is finding knowledgeable contractors and maintenance and repair technicians. My experience has been that a lot of contractors and repair technicians, they have plenty of work in the 101 corridors, so they're not that willing to come all the way out to Point Reyes for work. As far as repair technicians, the local plumbers here are not familiar with stand-ins, neither are the local electricians. Fortunately, we did find a local contractor who's both electric and plumbing contractor and was familiar with some stand-in systems, had installed them before. So that's how we got that project done. And that is the end of my presentation.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ruth. Real quick, as we queue up Mehmet's presentation, what was the total cost of the water heater upgrade at Mesa?
Let's see. I know the stand-ins were about 8,000. Let me see if I have that. On here.
We can come back to it too if you don't have it right in front of you, Ruth.
Yeah, I think the total cost ended up being around 11 or 12,000.
Okay, great.